How can one TikTok caption end an engagement overnight? Why did he choose quiet evidence over confrontation, documents over drama? What happens when a woman turns a trip into a spectacle, and her fiancé turns it into a lawful goodbye? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I'm Liora Vale, and I swear the Vegas trip wasn't supposed to ruin my life. It was just a weekend with my girls, neon lights, cocktails, music loud enough to drown out responsibility. Ethan said he trusted me. He just asked that I keep things low-key, which, to me, sounded like an invitation to prove I could still be fun. So when my friend filmed that little TikTok, me laughing by the pool, no ring, captioned, "Single girl energy in Vegas." I thought it was harmless. I posted it, went to sleep, and woke up viral. Millions of views, thousands of comments. I thought I'd won something. Then I saw Ethan's name disappear from my follower list. The next day, the hotel desk told me my flight home was cancelled. My mother said men overreact. My sister said I'd crossed a line. I said people were too sensitive. What I didn't know was that Ethan wasn't sulking. He was documenting. Every receipt, every clip, every lie I called a joke. I thought honesty was overrated. Turns out silence is worse. Because when a man decides to respond with order instead of emotion, you don't get a second chance to talk your way out. I kept saying it was just a trip. Everyone I knew took one before their wedding. A final escape before forever started. Vegas wasn't even my idea. Jade planned it, Ruth approved it, and the group chat said it was mandatory. I told Ethan it would be 3 nights, maybe 4, just to reset before all the wedding stress. He said fine, but his fine never sounded fine. He just nodded, that quiet way he does when he's already decided something inside himself. The night before the flight, I was half packing, half talking to my phone camera. I said I wanted to make a few travel clips, keep my followers updated. Ethan walked past holding his laptop, asked if I'd be recording the whole time. I laughed and told him that's how content works. He said he thought we were supposed to make memories, not media. I told him those are the same thing now. He didn't argue, just walked to the guest room, saying he had work. That room had become his second space lately, his files, his calendar, his order. I told myself it was just him being neat. My mother called as I zipped my suitcase. She said men always panic before weddings, that I should let him sulk and go have fun. She said no woman should apologize for enjoying her last days of freedom. I liked that phrase, last days of freedom. It sounded dramatic, cinematic. Mina, my sister, texted right after and ruined the mood. She said, "You're already acting single." I told her to relax. She said, "Just don't post anything you can't defend later." I told her I could defend anything. At the airport, the girls were already taking selfies near the gate, Jade shouting about angles and lighting. I joined them, even though Ethan's text popped up right as I smiled. "Boarding safe?" I replied with a heart emoji and ignored the follow-up bubble that appeared but never sent. The plane took off before I could decide whether to ask what he wanted to say. Vegas hit me like a stage light. Heat, glitter, music from somewhere you couldn't see. We checked into the hotel, a glass tower that smelled like perfume and chlorine. I filmed the suite, 2 queen beds, gold curtains, a mirror that made everyone look richer. Travis was there already, Jade's friend from her media job. I'd met him once at a launch event. He had that easy grin, camera always in hand. He called me bride-to-be like it was a punchline. When I said Ethan didn't like those jokes, Travis laughed and said, "Then he should have come along." I laughed too, though I knew Ethan wouldn't have. By evening, we were in sequins, lights bouncing off every surface. Travis said we should make a TikTok for the trip, something catchy. Jade came up with the caption, "Single girl energy in Vegas." I rolled my eyes and said it was dumb, but she said people loved irony. "You're not really single," she said. "It's just a vibe." I took off my ring for the video because she said the reflection ruined the shot. Just for a second, just for the vibe. The music thumped. I spun around, hair loose, Travis cheering behind the camera. I felt 21 again, like nothing could catch me. When he handed me the phone to watch the clip, I said it looked perfect. We uploaded it. The sound was trending. It would be stupid not to. By the time we hit the buffet an hour later, it already had hundreds of likes. Ethan called while I was sipping champagne. I silenced it. I told myself it was too loud to talk, that I'd call him later. Then I saw the notification. He texted, "Are you having fun?" I typed back, "Of course." With a sparkle emoji, hit send, and added another photo to my story before he could reply. The next morning, sunlight poured in like guilt. My phone was buzzing non-stop. Comments, shares, followers tagging me. I scrolled through them, all jokes and heart emojis. One said, "She understood the assignment." I smiled at that. Jade squealed from across the room that we were trending. I barely noticed Ethan's name missing from my recent messages. When I finally called him, he answered on the second ring. His voice was calm, too calm. He asked if I'd slept well. I said yes. He asked if I'd seen the video. I said of course, it was harmless. He said, "Harmless to who?" I told him people were just having fun, that nobody cared about captions. He said, "You care. You always care who's watching." I told him he was overreacting. He said maybe he was. Then he said he had to go and hung up. The girls told me to shake it off. Jade said, "He'll get over it when you come home." Ruth texted later saying men don't like being tested, but they always come around. Mina didn't text at all. I imagined her seeing the video and shaking her head. That night we went to a rooftop bar overlooking the strip. Travis kept saying we should celebrate hitting 10,000 likes. I said we'd toast to that. The light stretched forever, every building pulsing like a heartbeat. For a second, I forgot about Ethan completely. I told myself it was healthy to feel free before marriage. I told Travis it was all about confidence. He said, "Confidence looks good on you," and I didn't correct him. Back at the hotel, I saw Ethan's story still blank. He never posted much, but still, it felt like a silence shaped like me. I opened our shared album. Half the photos were gone. Maybe he'd cleaned it up. Maybe he was organizing for the wedding. I told myself it meant nothing. I fell asleep with the phone glowing beside me, comments still rolling in. The last thing I remember before drifting off was the faint ding of another notification. I didn't check it right away. When I did, half asleep, I saw only the preview. Travis tagged you in a video. Single girl energy. The next morning, my flight confirmation was gone from my inbox. The hotel desk said the reservation was extended 2 more nights under my name. I stared at the clerk, trying to remember if I had changed it. Maybe Jade did. Maybe Ethan. My phone buzzed again, but not from him. Just the algorithm telling me the video had crossed 1 million views. Everyone online loved the moment. Everyone except the person it actually belonged to. I texted Ethan, "Don't be mad. It's just for content." He didn't reply. I told myself he was working. I told myself silence meant forgiveness. I ordered another mimosa and promised I'd fix everything when I got home. The truth was, I didn't even know what needed fixing yet. By the time I landed back home, the air between us had gone solid. Ethan met me at the arrivals gate, polite but distant, the kind of distance that hides behind calm. He took my suitcase without saying much, carried it to the car, opened the door for me like he always did. For a second, I thought that meant things were fine. But when I said, "You saw the video, right?" he just nodded and said, "The internet never forgets." I laughed like he'd made a joke, but his face didn't move. The drive home was quiet, except for the blinker clicking at every turn. I filled the silence with stories about the trip, pretending everything was normal. I told him about the rooftop view, the food, the pool. He said he was glad I had fun. His tone was even, like he was reading a report. I asked if he was mad. He said no, just thinking. I hated when he said that. It meant there was something brewing that he wouldn't show until it was already done. When we got home, he put my suitcase in the hallway instead of the bedroom. I joked that he was punishing me. He said he didn't believe in punishment, only consequences. I asked what that meant, but he was already walking away, straight to the guest room. The door clicked shut. That click was louder than any argument we'd ever had. I spent the next morning trying to fix the narrative online. I posted a new TikTok from my couch, smiling, holding up my engagement ring like it was proof of innocence. The caption said, "Just a joke, calm down, still very much taken." People ate it up. I watched the comments come in, people defending me, saying the internet was too sensitive. I felt vindicated until I noticed one of my co-workers had tagged Damien from marketing with a laughing emoji. The whole office must have seen it by now. At work on Monday, everyone acted strange. Jade whispered that HR had probably watched the clip too, because I'd been on company time during part of the trip. I told her to relax, that no one cared, as long as I hit my deadlines. She said, "I care if you lose your job. I need my gossip buddy." I smiled, but my stomach twisted. I checked my phone constantly, waiting for Ethan to text something, anything. He didn't. That night, I came home to find the apartment unusually neat. His shoes were lined perfectly by the door, his keys on a separate hook I'd never seen before. On the counter were 2 mugs again, his spotless, mine half empty from the morning. Next to the sink was a folded dish towel, and under it, a small envelope addressed in his handwriting, "Utilities." I opened it and saw printed account statements, each with neat highlights. I didn't understand what any of it meant, so I left it on the counter. When he got home, I asked if he'd been reorganizing. He said, "Just sorting things before the wedding." I said, "What things?" He said, "The real ones." That night, he slept in the guest room again. I tried to act unbothered, watching shows loud enough to fill the space. Around midnight, I walked past the door and heard the faint hum of his printer. When I peeked through the crack, the blue light from his laptop glowed over a spreadsheet. I saw words like bank and lease in neat columns before he closed it. I said, "Working late?" He said, "Just catching up." I said, "You never used to bring work home." He said, "Some things belong in writing." Then he shut the lid. The next day, I met Mina for coffee. She looked tired before she even sat down. She asked if I realized what I'd done. I told her she was being dramatic. She said Ethan had called Dad last night, not for advice, just to confirm mailing addresses. She said that was the kind of detail men checked before ending things properly. I said she was paranoid. She said I was blind. I left early, pretending I had a meeting. When I got back to the apartment, Ethan was already home, sitting on the couch reading something on his tablet. I asked if he wanted to talk. He said, "We've done enough talking for a while." I said he couldn't just freeze me out. He said, "You posted a performance. I'm giving you silence." That line stayed in my head long after he went to bed. The next morning, I found a new entry on the wall calendar. Downtown 9:15, personal. I asked what it was for. He said errands. I asked what kind of errands happened at exactly 9:15. He said, "The kind that need a signature." I laughed like it was funny, but he didn't laugh back. At the office, everyone knew. One of the guys said I was famous now, like that was a compliment. My boss just smiled tightly and said the company preferred professionalism, even off hours. Jade whispered that maybe I should take the video down before HR made it official. I said they'd have to ask nicely. When I got home, Ethan was at the dining table with 2 folders laid out in front of him. One was labeled household, the other joint. I asked if he was updating our wedding budget. He said, something like that. I tried to peek, but he slid them aside. I told him he was being secretive. He said, You called me boring for being private. I'm just living up to the name. That night, I scrolled through my comments again, reading the ones that called me confident, glowing, fearless. Those words were supposed to feel like armor. Instead, they felt like noise. I texted him from the next room. "We good?" He replied after a minute. "I'm not angry. Just adjusting." The next weekend, we were supposed to have dinner with his mother. Diane greeted me politely but didn't hug me. She said she'd seen the video, that it must have been hard watching people online talk about our relationship. I said it was blown out of proportion. She said, "Things only blow up when there's air in them first." I didn't know what she meant, but Ethan smiled faintly, like he did. At the table, I kept trying to lighten the mood. I joked that every bride needs a viral moment. Diane said, "Some moments go viral because they're wounds." I pretended not to hear. When Ethan paid the bill, he used a new card I'd never seen before. His name, no joint account logo. I noticed, but I didn't comment. That night, I opened his laptop when he went to shower. The screen blinked awake to a clean file tree. Archive A, Archive B, both locked with passwords. I felt a mix of curiosity and dread. I wanted to believe he was planning a surprise honeymoon, maybe paperwork for the new house. I closed it quickly before he came out. He asked if I'd been crying. I said no, just tired. He said, "You used to tell the truth better." I told him he was acting like I'd betrayed him. He said, "You made our private life a punchline." I said it was a joke. He said, "You keep saying that." We went to bed in silence again. I stared at the ceiling, counting the seconds between his breaths from the next room. I kept thinking of that caption, "Single girl energy." It was supposed to sound funny, not final. I reached for my phone, scrolled through the clip again, and watched the version where Travis zoomed in on my bare hand. For a second, I understood why Ethan hadn't argued. Some things didn't need arguing. They just needed evidence. When I woke up, the folders on the table were gone. In their place was a sticky note that said, "Running errands. Back later." I turned it over and saw one more line written small, "Don't wait up." I sat at the counter staring at my phone, the light flashing with notifications I didn't want to open. I told myself this was still fixable, that once the noise died down, Ethan would remember I was just being playful. But deep down, I felt the silence growing heavier, measured, like a clock ticking towards something official. When I came home that Monday night, Ethan was sitting on the balcony with the lights off, his phone face down beside him. The air smelled like rain and printer ink, faint but sharp. I asked why he was in the dark. He said it helped him think. I said that sounded depressing. He said, "It's peaceful." I poured wine and joined him, pretending we were normal. From our 10th floor view, the city looked unreal. Cars like beads of light, noise muted by distance. I told him we should get out more, take another trip, start over. He said we hadn't finished the first one yet. Inside, the apartment felt colder. On the table sat my laptop open to the comments section of the video. People were still arguing, some defending me, some calling me names. I told Ethan I couldn't keep reading the hate. He said I should have thought of that before I filmed it. I said I didn't film it. Travis did. He said, "You didn't stop him." I told him everyone films everything now, that it's not a big deal. He said, "Then why are you crying about it?" I said I wasn't. He just nodded like he didn't believe me. Later that night, I tried to kiss him. He turned his face slightly, polite but unmovable. I said he couldn't keep freezing me out forever. He said I'd already frozen myself on screen. I told him he was being cruel. He said, "I'm being consistent." Then he stood, took his mug from the railing, rinsed it in the sink, and went to bed. I sat outside until the glass felt cold against my arms. At work the next day, people still whispered when I walked by. Jade said the company's communications team had a meeting about social media policies. She looked guilty when she told me. I said they were probably just updating rules for everyone. She said no, they mentioned my name specifically. I laughed it off but checked my phone the moment she left. An email from HR sat in my inbox. Please schedule a short discussion regarding your recent public content. The words made my stomach drop. I texted Ethan that I might lose my job. He replied, "You built an audience. You'll be fine." I didn't know if that was sarcasm or not. That evening, the apartment smelled faintly of toner again. I followed the sound to the guest room. He wasn't printing, just sitting there typing something. I asked if he'd heard about my HR meeting. He said yes. I asked if he was going to ask how I felt. He said, "I think I already know." I said, "You don't know anything if you won't talk." He said, "You keep talking and say nothing." I told him I didn't deserve the silent treatment. He said, "You wanted an audience. Now you have one." That night, I scrolled through my old engagement photos. I zoomed in on the smiles, tried to remember if he'd ever looked truly happy. My reflection in the screen looked like a stranger wearing my face. I told myself he was just punishing me, that once he cooled off, he'd remember we were good together. But every sound in the apartment, the hum of the fridge, the soft click of his keyboard, felt like evidence being collected. 2 days later, I went to lunch with my mother. She said Ethan had called to check the contact for their caterer deposit. She thought it was sweet of him to stay organized. I froze mid-bite. I asked if he'd said anything else. She said he sounded calm, just wanted everything documented in writing. She said that's what responsible men do. I said it sounded ominous. She laughed and said I was dramatic. When I got home, the calendar on the wall had a new line. Meeting personal 10:45. I circled it with a red pen and waited for him to notice. He didn't. He came in late, washed his hands, and asked if I'd eaten. I said yes. I asked where he'd been. He said, "Errands." I said, "Downtown again?" He said, "You always assume the worst." I said, "You always hide it." He said, "I document it." That phrase hit me strange. Document, like a lawyer, like something official. I started searching for signs everywhere. The neatly folded receipts, the emails he didn't explain, the separate coffee mug again on the far counter. He had renamed our shared Wi-Fi from Corbin Home to eCorbin Private. I noticed, but I pretended not to. Mina called later that week. She asked if Ethan had forgiven me yet. I said he was just processing. She said processing means he's done. I told her she was jealous of our relationship. She said she was terrified for me. I hung up before she could finish the sentence. The next morning, I woke up to my phone vibrating with new tags. Someone had found Travis's behind-the-scenes clip, the one where he joked that I'd lost the ring somewhere fun. The comments exploded again, this time uglier. I wanted to throw up. I ran to show Ethan. He was in the hallway, wearing a pressed shirt, tie already knotted. I held the phone out, asked if he'd seen it. He looked once, then said, "It's not my problem anymore." I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "It means you keep giving the internet free content. Maybe they'll pay you this time." He brushed past me to grab his briefcase. At work, I couldn't focus. Every time the office door opened, I thought HR was coming for me. By 3, they did. The meeting was short. They said they valued my contributions, but wanted to remind me of company representation. I nodded, smiled, said I understood. They handed me a policy sheet to sign. The room felt smaller with every word. When I walked out, Jade was waiting near the elevators. She asked how it went. I said fine, but my voice cracked. She didn't push. When I got home that night, the apartment felt hollow. He'd left dinner on the counter for me, takeout from the place I liked, but ate separately. There was a sticky note on the bag. Didn't know what time you'd be back. I wanted to believe it meant he still cared. But the neatness of his handwriting felt like distance, not affection. I tried to bridge it. I walked to the guest room, stood in the doorway, and told him I was sorry. He looked up from his laptop. His eyes were calm again, almost kind. He said, "I know you think that fixes things." I said it did fix things. that we just needed to talk. He said, "Talking is what got us here." I told him he couldn't end things over one joke. He said, "It's not one joke. It's a pattern." I asked what pattern. He said, "Disrespect dressed as humor." For a moment, I didn't have words. I wanted to scream or cry, but his quiet made both impossible. I asked if he was going to call off the wedding. He said, "There's nothing to call off yet." I asked what that meant. He said, "You'll find out soon enough." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my own smile looping on screen, the caption under it glowing, "Single girl energy." The phrase used to make me laugh. Now it sounded like a warning. I reached for Ethan's pillow. Cold, untouched. I whispered his name once, just to see if he'd answer. Nothing. In the morning, I found another calendar note in his careful handwriting, "File upload complete." The sound of the printer started again, steady, deliberate. I walked to the doorway. He didn't look up. On the screen behind him, rows of folders gleamed. My name appeared in one. I said, "Are you saving our memories or deleting them?" He said, "Neither, just organizing facts." I asked what kind of facts. He said, "The kind that keep stories straight." I laughed, a thin, brittle sound. I told him he was acting like a lawyer. He said, "No, like someone who's done being accused." The printer clicked off. He stacked the papers neatly, slid them into an envelope, and locked it in his drawer. Then he turned to me and said, "You should check your phone." I did. A new tag flashed across the screen. Someone had posted a side-by-side of my video and a photo from our engagement shoot, captioned, "From Fiancé to Free Spirit." I wanted to explain, defend, shout at someone. But Ethan just said, "They're not wrong." Then he left for work. I sat on the couch, staring at the blank TV screen, feeling the silence close in again. Somewhere in that silence, under all the clicking and filing and calm, something irreversible had already started. I just didn't know how close the end really was. By the weekend, people stopped whispering behind my back and started saying things straight to my face. My co-workers stopped inviting me to lunch. Jade said she still had my back, but even her tone had softened, like she pitied me. The video was still floating everywhere. Someone had slowed it down and zoomed in on my bare finger. Another comment thread said Ethan had escaped early. I wanted to scream at them that we were fine, that we were still together, except I wasn't sure anymore. Ethan didn't fight me, didn't yell. He just moved quieter. The guest room became his office now. The printer ran late at night. The shredder hummed in the mornings. His new habits had their own rhythm, calm and efficient, like I was living beside an algorithm instead of a man. When I asked what he was doing, he said he was making space. I said we had plenty of space already. He said not enough for truth. On Sunday, we had brunch with both families. It was supposed to smooth things over. My mother said we needed to control the narrative. Ethan said he'd make the reservation. I should have known that meant he was planning something else. The restaurant was one of those cozy family places with framed photos on the walls and soft music no one listened to. My mother, Ruth, came in first, already in her bright coral dress, like she was heading to a wedding. Mina trailed behind, arms crossed, expression flat. Ethan's mother, Diane, was already seated when we arrived, neat as always, reading the menu like it contained a verdict. Ethan pulled out her chair, not mine. The waitress came by, asked if we were celebrating something. Ruth said, "An engagement, still?" and laughed too loudly. Diane didn't look up. Ethan said, "Maybe not." Ruth blinked at him, unsure if she'd heard right. I smiled, pretended it was a joke, but his eyes didn't change. Conversation stumbled along. Ruth tried to talk about wedding venues. Mina cut in to ask if we were even still planning one. I told her yes, of course. Ethan said, "She's planning something, I'm sure." Diane asked if we'd set a date. I said we were waiting for things to calm down. Diane said, "Real commitment doesn't wait." I tried to steer the topic towards something safer, told a story about the Vegas hotel and how we got upgraded to a suite. Ruth laughed. Ethan said, "Probably for the publicity." His tone was polite but sharp underneath. Mina looked between us and said softly, "This is painful to watch." I told her she was making it worse. She said, "No, you did that yourself." Ruth told us to stop ruining brunch. Ethan folded his napkin neatly and said, "I'm not ruining anything. I'm clarifying." Then he turned to me and said, "Why don't you tell them about the clip you posted yesterday?" My stomach tightened. I hadn't told anyone. It was a short video I'd posted that morning. A throwback to Vegas, set to a sad song, captioned, "Sometimes people only love your highlight reel." It was supposed to make me look reflective, not desperate. Ruth gasped, asked if I'd really posted more. Diane just sighed like she'd expected it. I said it wasn't that serious. Ethan said, "Everything becomes serious eventually." Mina muttered, "He's not wrong." The waitress returned with water and tension. I tried to fix my smile. I said Ethan and I were just joking, that people online exaggerate. Ethan said, "So do you." His voice was calm, the kind of calm that doesn't bend. I said I didn't deserve this kind of humiliation. He said, "Then stop creating it." Ruth reached across the table, touched my wrist, and whispered that I should apologize. I told her I didn't need to apologize for having a sense of humor. Diane said, "Humor at the cost of respect isn't humor." Ruth glared at her. Mina said under her breath, "He's handling this better than anyone would." That sentence burned. I asked what she meant. She said, "You've been lucky he's still here." I said, "Maybe I'm the one staying." Ethan said, "That's an interesting way to put it." Silence spread over the table. Even the waitress didn't come back for a while. The air felt heavy, thick with embarrassment. Ruth forced a laugh and said, "Let's just toast to fresh starts." Diane lifted her glass politely, but didn't drink. Ethan didn't touch his. I clinked mine against my mother's anyway. Halfway through the meal, Ethan's phone buzzed. He looked at it once, put it face down, and said, "I need to stop by somewhere after this." I asked where. He said, "Downtown." I asked what for. He said, "You'll know soon." Ruth frowned, said he sounded ominous. Diane said, "He sounds decisive." I couldn't breathe right after that. Every fork scraping the plate felt like an accusation. When the check came, Ethan reached for his card, the same one I'd seen before, the new one with only his name. He signed the bill carefully, placed it back in the folder, and stood. "I'll take care of this," he said. "You enjoy brunch." Then he walked out. Ruth looked at me like I should chase him. Mina looked like she hoped I wouldn't. Diane wiped her mouth delicately and said, "He's choosing dignity." Ruth snapped that dignity doesn't keep marriages alive. Diane said, "Neither does mockery." Mina stood then and said she was leaving. She told me, "You should think about what happens when the only person still defending you stops." I sat there, pretending to finish my coffee. My mother stayed quiet for once. I wanted her to tell me it was all fine, that men just go through moods, that I was still in control. But she just stirred her cup, eyes on the table. When I got home, Ethan wasn't there. The apartment smelled faintly of cologne and toner again. On the kitchen counter, 2 envelopes sat side by side, one labeled utilities, one labeled lease. I opened the first, copies of bills, his neat handwriting noting payment dates. The second was empty, except for a folded sticky note, "Discuss soon." I sat down and stared at it, trying to decide if it was a threat or a courtesy. My phone buzzed again, a text from Mina. "He's done talking. You better fix it before he fixes it legally." I deleted it. That night I called Ethan twice. No answer. I left a message saying I loved him, that I was sorry if he felt embarrassed. I said we could delete everything, move past it, start fresh. I said he was being cold and unfair. The voicemail cut me off halfway through my sentence. The next morning, he was at the kitchen table, dressed neatly, coffee steaming beside him. I said I'd been calling. He said he knew. I asked if he'd listened. He said, "You said enough online." I figured I'd let silence have a turn. I told him he was punishing me. He said, "No, I'm preparing." I laughed too loud. I asked if he was threatening me. He said, "You use that word a lot. Threat, control, punishment. Maybe you should think about why." I told him he sounded like a therapist. He said, "No, just someone who's done repeating himself." I asked what he wanted from me. He said, "Accountability." I said, "That's not a feeling." He said, "It's better than one." We stood there for a long moment, just breathing in opposite rhythms. Then he picked up his coffee, rinsed the mug, and set it on the far side of the counter, his corner. He looked at me once and said, "I'll see you at Diane's tomorrow. There's something I need to say." I tried to follow him, ask what he meant, but the door clicked before I could. The sound of it closing stayed with me all day. It didn't sound angry. It sounded finished. I wanted to text him again, maybe beg, maybe joke, maybe anything. But every word I typed felt like proof of guilt. So I just sat there staring at my phone, waiting for a message that didn't come. I thought of all the noise I'd made, all the laughter I'd forced, and realized silence could be the loudest sound in the world. He didn't come home after work that Monday. I sat on the couch watching the lights from the street move across the walls until they disappeared. By midnight, I texted him, "Are you okay? Then, at least tell me where you are." The messages stayed unread. When I finally went to bed, the sheets on his side were cold and smooth, tucked too neatly, like no one planned to mess them up again. The next morning, I woke to a note on the kitchen counter. It said only, "Breakfast in the fridge. Meeting later. Don't wait up." No love, no "see you tonight," just that. His handwriting looked too calm. I opened the fridge and found a single container with oatmeal, perfectly portioned, covered in plastic wrap. It felt more like evidence than breakfast. At work, my phone kept lighting up with new tags. Someone had posted screenshots of my Vegas clips next to photos from our engagement shoot. The caption read, "From Fiancé to free agent." I deleted my account before lunch, but people had already saved the content. I couldn't undo it. Jade came over to my desk and said HR wanted another chat. I told her I was busy. She whispered that they might suspend me if I didn't respond. I said, "Let them." When I got home, Ethan was sitting at the dining table sorting papers into piles. He didn't look up when I walked in. I said I'd had a rough day. He said, "That's been happening a lot." I asked what he was doing. He said, "Organizing responsibilities." I told him it sounded dramatic. He said, "So did your video." I sat across from him and tried to soften my voice. I told him I wanted to fix things, that maybe we should take a trip together, somewhere quiet. He said, "We're not broken, we're just done pretending." I told him he was talking like a lawyer again. He said, "No, lawyers talk to win. I'm just making sure everything is fair." On the counter behind him sat another folder, this one labeled Joint. I reached for it, but he put his hand over the cover. "Not this time," he said. His tone wasn't angry. It was almost gentle, which made it worse. That evening, I called my mother. I told her Ethan was scaring me. She said he was probably just tired, that men pull away sometimes to make you chase them. I said he wasn't pulling away. He was erasing me. She said I was being dramatic. I hung up before she could say more. When I looked through the apartment, I started noticing things missing. His coat from the rack, his extra charger, a few books from the shelf. In the closet, his suits were gone except for one. His shoes were stacked neatly, but fewer pairs. He was dismantling himself piece by piece. I confronted him that night. I said, "You're planning to leave me." He said, "I'm planning to live properly." I said he was making everything sound legal. He said, "It will be." I laughed. even though my throat felt tight. "You wouldn't," I said. He looked up at me then, steady, calm. "I already am." I wanted to break something, to force a reaction, but he just stood and started rinsing his mug again. That sound, the soft swirl of water, made me feel invisible. I said, "You can't just end this like a contract." He said, "You turned it into one the moment you signed our life away online." We didn't talk for the rest of the night. The air between us felt too heavy. Around midnight, I heard his phone vibrate and a faint beep, the same one that always came from that recording app he used for meetings. I wondered if he was recording me now, saving every word. The next morning, he dressed in a suit. I asked if he had another meeting. He said yes, something personal. I asked if it was about us. He said, "It's always about us now." Then he left, and the apartment door shut softly behind him. I wandered into the guest room. The drawers were half empty, but on the desk sat a single sticky note. "Bring forms." I stared at it for a long time, trying to decide if it was meant for me. I opened the top drawer, empty except for one USB stick labeled with yesterday's date. My hand shook when I touched it. I plugged it into my laptop. It held nothing but folders, named by month, each one filled with screenshots. Bank transactions, messages, photos, timestamps from my posts. Every piece of my life catalogued. My name appeared in file titles next to words like proof and timeline. I yanked it out and threw it in the trash. 5 minutes later, I picked it back up. I couldn't stop myself. What if he'd left it there on purpose? What if it was bait to see how I'd react? I put it back exactly where it was and closed the drawer. That night, Mina showed up uninvited. She said she'd talked to Ethan. I asked what he told her. She said he didn't need to say much. She said he was calm, professional, like someone giving instructions, not seeking comfort. I told her she was exaggerating. She said, "He's ending this properly, Liora." I told her she didn't know him. She said, "Maybe I finally do." I asked why she came. She said she wanted to give me a chance to stop it before it went public. I laughed. "What's going public? My heartbreak?" She said, "No." His response. Then she stood, said she hoped I'd get help, and left. When Ethan came home later, I was waiting. I told him he was cruel for talking to my sister behind my back. He said, "I didn't. She called me." I said, "You could have refused to answer." He said, "You never refused attention. Why should I?" I told him that wasn't fair. He said, "Fair starts tomorrow." He poured himself a glass of water, drank half, and looked at me over the rim. "You'll hear from me properly," he said. I asked what that meant. He said, "It means no more guessing." I begged him to just talk to me like before. No notes, no folders, no cold distance. He said, "We tried talking. You turned every conversation into content." I said he was overreacting. He said, "You call everything an overreaction until it's too late." He turned to go to the guest room, but I grabbed his arm. "Just tell me you still love me," I said. He didn't pull away. He just looked down at my hand and said, "Love isn't the question anymore." Then he freed himself gently and walked away. I sank onto the floor, feeling the hum of the refrigerator and the faint buzz of my phone on the counter. Another notification. Someone had tagged me again. I didn't even open it. The sound of the printer started from the other room, steady, deliberate. After a while, the noise stopped, replaced by the click of a drawer locking. Then his voice, low and clear through the doorway. "This will all be handled properly." I told myself that meant he was finally ready to forgive me. I told myself tomorrow would be our restart. But deep down, I knew his properly didn't sound like reconciliation. It sounded like paperwork. He asked me to meet him in the lobby of his office building, said we needed to talk face to face. I thought it meant reconciliation. I wore the dress he liked, rehearsed an apology in the elevator mirror. When the doors opened, he was standing beside a clerk holding an envelope. He didn't smile. The clerk asked my name, confirmed it, and handed me the papers. Petition for financial and co-resident separation. People nearby turned to look. I tried to speak, but Ethan just said, "This is the proper way." His voice was calm, almost kind. Cameras flashed from someone's phone as he walked out, leaving me standing there with my ring still on and my name printed under the word respondent